Billionaire CEO hit her, said, "You can't have a child." 8 years later, she came with twins to his award ceremony. "You can't have a child, especially not mine." The words cut through the air like a knife as Evan Pierce's hand struck Ava's cheek with enough force to make her stumble backward. The sting of his palm against her skin was nothing compared to the cold fury in his eyes. Eyes that had once looked at her with admiration, perhaps even love. "I built this company from nothing," he continued, his voice dangerously quiet. "I won't let you or anyone else derail everything I've worked for. If you insist on keeping this mistake, you'll do it alone. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." Have you ever wondered what happens when someone with everything, money, power, success, is confronted with the consequences of their cruelest decision? What would it take for a man who chose ambition over humanity to face the truth of what he abandoned? If you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone shattered it, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from facing the very people who once broke us. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of a woman who faced unimaginable rejection, built a new life from the ashes, and years later, returned to confront the man who once told her to choose between her career and her unborn child. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom cast a golden glow over the assembled business elite as Ava Lewis stood at the back of the room, her heart hammering against her ribs. 8 years had passed since she'd last seen Evan Pierce, yet the sight of him ascending the stage still made her breath catch. The man being celebrated as entrepreneur of the decade looked exactly as she remembered, commanding, immaculate, untouchable. "Mom, is that him?" whispered Liam, his serious eyes, so like his father's, studying the man on stage with intense curiosity. "Yes," she answered softly, smoothing his carefully combed hair. "That's him." On her other side, Noah fidgeted with his bow tie. "There are a lot of people here." Ava squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "Just stay close to me." At 42, Evan had only grown more striking with age, silver threading elegantly through his dark hair, his tailored tuxedo accentuating the athletic build he somehow maintained despite endless hours in boardrooms. As founder and CEO of Meridian Technologies, his face had appeared on every major business magazine, the architect of a digital empire worth billions. "Thank you for this tremendous honor," Evan began, his deep voice resonating through the ballroom. "When I founded Meridian 15 years ago, I had a vision of technology that would transform how we connect with our world." Ava barely heard the words. Instead, she found herself transported back to their first meeting, when she was just a brilliant but unassuming software engineer fresh from MIT with groundbreaking ideas about artificial intelligence interfaces. The interview at Meridian Technologies had been her 5th that week. Despite graduating at the top of her class, the tech industry's subtle biases made finding a position that would truly value her innovations challenging. But Meridian was different, or so she thought. "Your algorithm is revolutionary," Evan had told her after her presentation, his intense gaze making her simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. "Could transform our entire platform." She remembered how his eyes had lit up as she explained her approach to machine learning, how he'd asked questions that pushed her thinking further, how for the first time in her job search, she felt truly seen for her mind rather than judged for her gender or quiet demeanor. "When can you start?" he'd asked before she'd even finished her presentation. Within months of joining Meridian, Ava was leading her own development team, working directly with Evan on what would become the company's flagship product. Their collaboration was electric, minds operating in perfect synchronicity, pushing each other to greater innovation. Late nights in the office evolved into dinners discussing project architecture, which gradually shifted to conversations about literature, philosophy, dreams. "You're different from anyone I've ever worked with," Evan told her one night, the city lights glittering below his penthouse windows. "You see possibilities others miss." When their professional relationship finally crossed into the personal, it felt inevitable, the natural progression of a connection that had been building for months. Ava fell hard for the man behind the corporate legend, the one who quoted obscure poetry when exhausted and who still called his grandmother every Sunday. Or at least she thought she had. 14 months into their relationship, everything changed with 2 words, I'm pregnant. The transformation in Evan was immediate and chilling. His expression shifted from shock to something colder, more calculated as he set down his whiskey glass with deliberate precision. That's impossible, he said finally. We've been careful. Not careful enough, apparently. She attempted a smile that faltered under his hardening gaze. I know this isn't what we planned. But, no. The single syllable cut through the room like a blade. This isn't happening, Ava. She had expected surprise, perhaps even initial resistance. But the absolute finality in his tone sent a chill through her. What do you mean, this isn't happening? I'm already 8 weeks along. Evan rose from the leather sofa, moving to the bar cart to pour another drink. His movements were controlled, methodical, the same precision that had built Meridian Technologies from a startup to a billion-dollar company in under a decade. I've been clear from the beginning about my priorities, he said, his back to her. Meridian is at a critical juncture. The European expansion, the new product line, the IPO preparations. I can't afford distractions. Distractions? The word struck her like a physical blow. Is that what our child would be to you? He turned then, his expression a mask of practiced neutrality that she had seen him deploy in countless business negotiations. Be reasonable, Ava. We've been together for what, 14 months? This was never meant to be permanent. The casual dismissal of their relationship staggered her. Somewhere amid shared dreams and tangled sheets, Ava had fallen in love with the man she thought she knew. The realization that he didn't share those feelings, had perhaps never shared them, was devastating. I understand this is unexpected, she said carefully, but we can figure this out together. I'm not asking you to abandon your company. There is no together to figure out. Evan interrupted, his voice eerily calm. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to derail everything now. A child doesn't fit into my life, Ava. Not now, possibly not ever. So what exactly are you suggesting? Her voice had grown quiet, a dangerous stillness settling over her. He met her gaze directly, unflinching. I think you know. The implication hung between them, monstrous in its simplicity. And if I don't agree? She asked, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Something flashed in his eyes then. Not anger, but something colder, more calculated. He set down his glass and crossed to his desk, retrieving a folder which he placed on the coffee table between them. Then I'll need to protect my interests. Inside the folder were papers detailing her past. The scholarship student who had worked 3 jobs to put herself through MIT, the family struggles, the student loans she was still paying off. Alongside these were printouts of company policies about relationships between executives and team members, highlighted sections of her employment contract. You would fire me? Disbelief colored her voice. For being pregnant? Of course not. That would be illegal. His smile didn't reach his eyes. But restructuring departments, eliminating positions due to strategic realignment, that happens every day in tech. And references in this industry are everything, Ava. You know that. The threat was clear. Her career, the one she had built through relentless work and brilliant innovation, would be systematically dismantled if she didn't comply. You can't be serious. She searched his face for any trace of the man she thought she knew. This isn't you, Evan. This is exactly who I am. He straightened his already immaculate cuffs. I've never pretended to be anything else. Meridian comes first, always has, always will. I thought you understood that. I understood you were ambitious. I didn't realize you were cruel. Something flickered across his face. Perhaps regret, perhaps merely annoyance at her persistence. I'm being practical. I'm offering a generous settlement. Enough to start fresh somewhere else. In a new city with new opportunities. Clean break. No complications. No complications, she repeated hollowly. Is that what our child is to you? A complication? Don't be dramatic, Ava. It's a cluster of cells, not a child. The clinical dismissal broke something inside her. She moved toward the door, dignity somehow intact despite the earthquake reshaping her world. Where are you going? He asked, surprise finally cracking his composed facade. Away from you. Her hand closed around the doorknob. "I'll clear out my desk in the morning. Don't throw away your career over this," he called after her. "Be rational." She paused in the doorway, turning to look at him one last time. "You know what's irrational, Evan? Believing that anything could ever be more important than the people we love. That's the real delusion." His expression hardened. "If you keep this baby, you're on your own. Completely. I won't acknowledge it, support it, or have any contact with it. Ever. Is that what you want?" The question hung in the air between them, a final chance to preserve the life she had built. Her career at Meridian had been everything she'd worked for: cutting-edge projects, brilliant colleagues, the resources to create technology that could change the world. But as she looked at the stranger wearing Evan's face, the decision crystallized with sudden clarity. "What I want," she said quietly, "is for our child never to know what kind of man his father really is." She closed the door behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded like finality. If you've ever had to choose between your principles and your comfort, hit that like button. And if you believe that true strength isn't measured by power or wealth, but by the courage to stand up for what's right, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. The next morning, when Ava arrived to collect her belongings, her keycard no longer worked. Security met her in the lobby, handed her a box of personal items, and escorted her from the building. By afternoon, her company email was deactivated. By evening, her final paycheck and a severance agreement requiring her silence had appeared in her account. Double what company policy dictated, but a fraction of what her innovations had earned Meridian. She had expected this. What she hadn't expected was the desperate need to see Evan one more time, to make him understand what he was throwing away. Not just her, but the possibility of a family, of a love deeper than ambition. A week after their confrontation, she returned to his penthouse, hoping that time and reflection might have softened his stance. The doorman, who knew her well, let her up without calling ahead. A kindness that would prove devastating. When Evan opened the door, his initial surprise quickly hardened into something dangerous. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, blocking the entrance. "Please, just hear me out," Ava said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I've been thinking about everything, and I believe we can find a solution that works for both." "There is no both anymore," he cut her off. "I made myself perfectly clear. The decision is yours, but if you choose to have this child, you do it without me or my resources. This isn't just about money, Evan. This is about a life we created together. A child who deserves to know their father." Something shifted in his expression then, a coldness she had glimpsed before but never so nakedly displayed. "You still don't understand, do you? I don't want this. I don't want the responsibility, the distraction, the inevitable complications. I built Meridian from nothing, and I won't let anything or anyone compromise what I've created. A child isn't a compromise, Evan. It's a gift." His laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. "A gift I never asked for and don't want." She stepped closer, one hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "Please, just think about." The movement happened so quickly she barely registered it until the sting bloomed across her cheek. Evan's hand had struck her with enough force to make her stumble backward, her own hand rising to the burning skin in shock. "You can't have a child, especially not mine," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I built this company from nothing. I won't let you or anyone else derail everything I've worked for. If you insist on keeping this mistake, you'll do it alone. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." The threat hung between them, but it was the physical blow that shattered any remaining illusion. This man, this stranger, was capable of violence when his control was threatened. What else might he be capable of? "I understand now," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "Perfectly." She turned and walked away, her cheek still burning, her heart hardened with a new resolve. That night, she booked a one-way ticket to Boston, where a former professor had once offered her a position. By morning, she was gone from the city that had once held all her dreams, carrying with her the only dream that now mattered, the child growing within her. 3 days after arriving in Boston, a routine medical check revealed the final surprise in this cascade of life-altering revelations. She was carrying twins. The first year was the hardest. Pregnant and effectively blacklisted in the industry she loved, Ava retreated to Boston where her former professor, Dr. Eleanor Winters, offered her consulting work. She lived frugally, saving the severance money for the baby's arrival, working remotely until her advancing pregnancy made even sitting at a computer for long hours impossible. "You need to rest, Ava," Eleanor insisted during their weekly check-in, concern evident in her voice. "The algorithms can wait." "The babies won't," Ava replied, one hand absently rubbing her swollen belly. "And neither will the rent." Eleanor's sigh carried through the phone line. "You know I could help you more if you'd let me." "You've done enough," Ava insisted. "The consulting work is perfect. I can do it on my own schedule from home." What she didn't say was how the work was her lifeline, the one thing keeping her connected to the field she loved, the one part of her identity that remained untouched by Evan's betrayal. In the quiet hours of the night, when the twins were particularly active, she would talk to them about coding principles, algorithm structures, the elegant mathematics underlying digital innovation, as if preparing them for the world they would enter, a world she was determined would be better than the one that had rejected their mother. When Liam and Noah arrived on a snowy January morning, tiny and perfect with their father's strong jawline and her warm brown eyes, the abstract concept of motherhood crystallized into fierce, overwhelming love. Looking at their identical faces, Ava made a silent vow. These boys would never feel unwanted, would never question their worth the way their father had made her question hers. "They're beautiful, Ava," the nurse said as she placed the swaddled infants in her arms. "Do they have their father's eyes?" "No," Ava said firmly. "Everything good in them comes from love, not from him." The nurse, sensing the weight behind those words, simply nodded and left her alone with her sons. In that quiet hospital room, holding the two tiny lives that depended entirely on her, Ava allowed herself to cry for the first time since leaving New York. Not tears of regret or self-pity, but of determination. These boys deserved everything, and she would move mountains to give it to them. The twins were barely 6 months old when Ava launched her own software development firm from her small apartment, coding during naps and after bedtime, gradually building a reputation for elegant solutions to complex problems. She named it Lewis Innovation Group, deliberately using only her surname, refusing to let Evan's rejection define her professionally any more than it would define her sons personally. "How do you do it all?" asked Mira, the neighbor who occasionally watched the twins when Ava had unavoidable meetings. "Single mother, startup founder. I'm exhausted just watching you." Ava smiled as she watched Noah and Liam playing on the living room floor, already showing distinct personalities despite their identical appearance. "I don't have a choice, and honestly, they make it worth every sleepless night." "Still," Mira persisted, "their father should be helping. Have you considered?" "There is no father," Ava interrupted, her tone gentle but final. "Just us." By the time the boys were 3, Lewis Innovation Group had grown enough to afford a modest office and 2 employees. By 5, they had moved to a comfortable townhouse in a good school district. By 7, her company had become respected in the industry, specializing in ethical AI applications that larger corporations often overlooked. Through it all, Ava maintained her silence about Evan Pierce. She never pursued child support, never publicly connected her sons to their famous father, never leveraged the relationship that might have opened doors but would have exposed the twins to the man who had rejected them before birth. When they began asking about their father around age 4, she crafted a narrative that protected them from the harshest truths, while honoring their need to understand their origins. "Your father is a very successful businessman," she would tell them. "He wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born. Sometimes adults make choices that are about them, not about the people they might hurt." "But doesn't he want to know us now?" Noah asked one night, his small face troubled. "We're big now. We wouldn't bother him too much." The innocent question broke her heart. "It's not about you being a bother, sweetheart. Some people just aren't ready for the kind of love that being a parent requires." "Does he know about us?" Liam asked, always the more analytical of the two. That we exist? Yes, Ava answered honestly. He knows. And he still doesn't want to meet us? The hurt in Noah's voice was palpable. Ava gathered both boys into her arms. His loss, she said firmly. The greatest loss of his life. As they grew older, the questions became more specific, more difficult to navigate without outright lies. Why didn't he ever visit? Why didn't he send birthday cards? Did he know they existed? Did he ever ask about them? Ava walked the delicate line between truth and protection, allowing the boys to form their own understanding of the father who existed for them only in magazine photos and occasional television appearances. She never spoke ill of Evan, never revealed the cruelty of their final encounters, never burdened them with the knowledge that their father had once referred to them as a complication to be eliminated. Mom, look! 7-year-old Liam held up a business magazine featuring Evan on the cover. It's him, isn't it? Our father. Ava's heart skipped a beat. Where did you find that? At the dentist's office, Noah explained, peering over his brother's shoulder at the glossy image. It says he's a visionary entrepreneur. What does that mean? It means he's very good at seeing possibilities and turning them into successful businesses, Ava explained carefully. Like you do with your company? Liam asked. Similar, yes, but on a much larger scale. Noah studied the photo intently. I have his chin, he said finally. And Liam has his eyebrows. You both have his determination, Ava admitted. And his intelligence. Those are good things to inherit. Does he know that? Liam asked, his young face suddenly serious. That we're smart like him? The question caught her off guard. I haven't spoken to him since before you were born, she said honestly. But someday, when you're older, if you want to reach out to him, that will be your choice. I don't think I want to, Noah declared, surprising her. He made you sad. I can tell when you talk about him. Ava pulled both boys close. You two have never made me sad. Not for a single moment. You're the best decision I ever made. The years passed in a rhythm of school projects, soccer games, chess tournaments, and the steady growth of Lewis Innovation Group. Ava built a life centered around her sons and her work, finding fulfillment in both. If sometimes, late at night, she wondered what might have been. If Evan had made a different choice, if they could have been a family. She never allowed those thoughts to linger by daylight. Then, 3 months before the twins' 8th birthday, everything changed. Mom, I don't feel good, Liam complained one morning, his normally energetic demeanor subdued. I'm really tired. Ava felt his forehead. No fever. Does anything hurt? Not really. I'm just tired. And look. He pulled up his sleeve to reveal a cluster of small bruises on his arm. These showed up, but I didn't bump into anything. Something cold settled in Ava's stomach. Let's have Dr. Chun take a look, just to be safe. What followed was a whirlwind of appointments, tests, specialists, and finally, a diagnosis that changed everything. Fanconi anemia, a rare genetic blood disorder affecting bone marrow function. The condition was serious but treatable with proper monitoring and care. However, the genetic counselor had been clear. Understanding the family medical history, particularly from the father's side, would be crucial for developing Liam's long-term treatment plan. We need to know if there are any relatives with similar conditions, Dr. Patel explained gently. Sometimes these disorders run in families, and knowing the pattern can help us anticipate complications. I don't have contact with their father, Ava admitted, but I'll try to get the information. That night, after the twins were asleep, Ava sat at her kitchen table staring at her laptop screen. The Meridian Technologies website opened to the executive leadership page. Evan's professional biography stared back at her, listing his accomplishments, awards, and visionary leadership, but revealing nothing of the man who had once struck her across the face for daring to challenge his perfect life plan. With trembling fingers, she composed an email to Meridian's legal department, explaining the medical situation in clinical terms, requesting family medical history for the sake of their son's health. She attached Liam's diagnosis and the doctor's letter emphasizing the importance of the information, then hit send before she could reconsider. The response came 3 days later, A form letter stating that all personal matters regarding Mr. Pierce should be directed to his private legal team, with contact information for a prestigious law firm. Ava immediately forwarded her request to the indicated address. 2 weeks passed with no response. Liam's condition remained stable but concerning, with his blood counts requiring regular monitoring. Ava called the law firm, only to be told that her request was under review. Another week passed, then another. Each call to the firm yielded the same response. Mr. Pierce's representatives were looking into the matter. "They're stonewalling me," Ava told Eleanor during a rare lunch break. "It's been over a month, and Liam's doctor is getting concerned about proceeding without complete information." Eleanor studied her former student with concern. "Have you considered a more direct approach?" "What do you mean?" "Evan Pierce is receiving the Entrepreneur of the Decade Award next month at the National Business Innovation Gala. This being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel. Very exclusive, very public." Ava's eyes widened. "You think I should confront him there? In public?" "I think a man who values his public image as much as Evan Pierce does might be more responsive when faced with a situation he can't simply ignore or delegate to his legal team." Eleanor's expression softened. "Besides, it might be time for the boys to see for themselves who their father really is." The suggestion was radical, potentially traumatic for the twins, and yet, what choice did she have? Liam's health couldn't wait for legal maneuvering and corporate stonewalling. That evening, Ava sat the boys down for the most difficult conversation since they'd started asking about their father. "I need to tell you something important," she began, choosing her words carefully. "Liam's condition. The doctors believe it might be connected to genetics from your father's side of the family." The twins exchanged glances, their silent communication as effective as spoken words. "We need information from him to help with Liam's treatment," she continued. "I've tried contacting him through official channels, but I haven't received any response." "So what are we going to do?" Noah asked, his protective instinct toward his twin evident in his voice. Ava took a deep breath. "There's an event next month where your father will be receiving an award. I'm thinking we should go there, try to speak with him directly." "You mean, meet him?" Liam's eyes widened. "For real?" "Yes, but I want you both to understand something first." She took each of their hands in hers. "Whatever happens when we meet him, however he reacts to seeing you, it doesn't change who you are or how loved you are. Some people aren't capable of being the parents their children deserve. That's not the child's fault. It's the parent's limitation." "What if he's mean to you again?" Noah asked quietly. Ava blinked in surprise. "What do you mean, again?" "Sometimes when you talk about him, you touch your cheek," Noah explained. "Like you're remembering something that hurt." The observation stunned her. How much had her perceptive sons pieced together from her unconscious gestures, from the gaps in her carefully edited stories? "I won't let him hurt Mom," Liam declared, his young face suddenly fierce with determination. "No one is going to hurt anyone," Ava assured them, though her own heart raced at the thought of facing Evan again. "This is just about getting the medical information you need, Liam. Nothing more." But as she helped the twins prepare for bed that night, Ava wondered if she was being honest, with them or with herself. After 8 years of silence, of building a life deliberately separate from Evan Pierce, was this really just about medical records? Or was some part of her seeking closure, vindication, perhaps even a reckoning? The decision to attend the gala hadn't been made lightly. For 8 years, Ava had protected her sons from the truth of their father's rejection. But Liam's health had to come first, even if it meant reopening wounds she had thought long healed. If you've ever had to face someone who once hurt you deeply for the sake of someone you love, hit that like button. And if you believe that true courage isn't the absence of fear but acting despite it, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories of remarkable resilience in the face of life's greatest challenges. Now, standing in the opulent ballroom watching Evan accept his award, Ava steeled herself for the confrontation to come. The twins, dressed in their best suits with carefully knotted ties, stood beside her, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and excitement. And so I accept this award not as a personal achievement, but as recognition of what's possible when we refuse to compromise our vision. Evan concluded his speech to thunderous applause. Remember what we practiced? Ava whispered to the twins as Evan descended from the stage, immediately surrounded by well-wishers and industry peers. No matter what happens, we face it together. The twins nodded solemnly, their identical faces reflecting a mixture of emotions too complex for their young years. Whatever came next, whether Evan acknowledged them or rejected them again, they would weather it as they had everything else. As a family bound by love stronger than blood, stronger than rejection, stronger than the ambition that had once seemed more important than the miracle of two perfect boys. As the crowd around Evan began to thin, Ava took a deep breath and guided the twins forward. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it, but her steps remained steady, propelled by 8 years of determination and one urgent medical necessity. "Congratulations on your award, Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice remarkably calm despite the storm of emotions within her. Evan turned, the polite smile he reserved for admirers and business contacts freezing on his face as recognition dawned. For a moment, just a flicker, genuine shock cracked his carefully maintained facade. His gaze dropped to the two small figures beside her, and something unreadable flickered across his features. "Ava," he said, her name sounding strange on his lips after so many years. "This is unexpected." "I apologize for the intrusion," she replied, her voice steady. "But there's an urgent matter we need to discuss." His expression hardened, the initial surprise replaced by the cold calculation she remembered all too well. "I'm afraid this isn't a good time. I have guests to attend to." "It's a medical issue," she pressed, keeping her voice low. "Regarding your son." The words hung in the air between them, a challenge and a revelation. Evan's gaze darted around the room, clearly assessing who might be witnessing this encounter. "My office," he said finally, gesturing toward a door at the side of the ballroom. 5 minutes. As he strode away, Liam looked up at her. "He doesn't seem very happy to see us." "He's just surprised," she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. "Come on." They followed Evan through a labyrinth of corridors to a private office suite. The headquarters of Meridian Technologies occupied the top 10 floors of the gleaming skyscraper where the gala was being held, and this particular room, with its panoramic views of the city, clearly belonged to its CEO. Evan closed the door behind them, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the twins. "So," he said finally, "you kept them both." The callousness of the statement made her instinctively step in front of the boys. "Yes, this is Liam and Noah." Evan made no move to greet them, instead circling his desk to put the massive expanse of polished wood between himself and the unexpected visitors. "What's this about a medical issue?" Before she could answer, Liam stepped forward, extending his hand just as they had practiced. "Hello, sir. I'm Liam Pierce. It's nice to meet you." The simple dignity in her son's gesture, the courage it took for him to reach across the chasm of his father's indifference, filled Ava with fierce pride and heartache in equal measure. Evan stared at the small hand for a long moment before briefly shaking it, his movements mechanical. "Pierce." "Yes," Ava said quietly. "They have your name." Something complicated passed across his face. "Why would you?" "Because it was theirs by right," she interrupted. "Whatever happened between us, they deserved their heritage." Noah, always more hesitant than his brother, had pressed himself against Ava's side. "You look like the pictures," he said softly. "Pictures?" Evan's gaze snapped to Ava. "From magazines," she clarified. "The boys have been curious about you." Evan moved to the window, putting distance between himself and the small family. "You said there was a medical issue. What exactly are we talking about?" Ava placed her hands on Liam's shoulders. 3 months ago, Liam was diagnosed with Fanconi anemia, a rare blood disorder that genetic testing confirms came from your side of the family. His doctors need comprehensive family medical history to develop his treatment plan. "I see." Evan's voice was carefully neutral. "And you couldn't have sent this request through proper channels?" "Lawyers, perhaps." "I tried," Ava said, the frustration of those attempts evident in her voice. Your legal team buried my inquiries. This was my last resort. Evan turned back to face them, his gaze lingering on Liam with new interest. What does this condition entail? It affects bone marrow function, Ava explained. Liam's body doesn't produce enough blood cells. He needs regular monitoring, possibly transfusions, and there's a risk of more serious complications developing later. Is it terminal? Something flickered in Evan's eyes, the first genuine emotion he had displayed. Not necessarily, Ava said. With proper treatment, many patients live normal lives. But we need information about your family history to optimize his care. Evan nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on Liam. I'll have my assistant compile everything from my medical records and family history. You'll have it by tomorrow. Thank you, Ava said, relief washing through her. This was more cooperation than she had dared hope for. Is that all? Evan asked, already reaching for his phone, clearly eager to end the encounter. Noah, who had been silent until now, suddenly stepped forward. Don't you want to know anything about us? The simple question hung in the air, laden with 8 years of absence. Evan's hand stilled on his phone, something complicated passing across his features. We're in 3rd grade, Noah continued into the silence, words tumbling out nervously. I play soccer and Liam plays chess. He's really good. He won a tournament last month even though he wasn't feeling well. And we both like building robots. Mom says we get that from you. Ava's heart clenched at her son's transparent attempt to find connection with the father who had rejected them before they were born. She watched Evan's face, searching for any sign that Noah's innocent overture had penetrated the wall he had built. For a moment, something softened in Evan's expression as he looked at the boys. So clearly his sons, with echoes of his own features looking back at him. Then, as if catching himself, he straightened and the mask slipped back into place. I have guests waiting, he said, his voice deliberately impersonal. If there's nothing else regarding the medical situation. That's it? Ava interrupted, unwilling to let her sons witness any more of their father's indifference. We've taken enough of your time. Congratulations again on your award. She guided the twins toward the door, her hand protectively on Noah's shoulder. As they reached the threshold, Liam suddenly turned back. Sir? He said, his young voice steady despite the tension in the room. I just wanted to say thank you for the information that might help me get better. The simple courtesy, the innate grace in her son's words, seemed to catch Evan off guard. He stared at Liam for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're welcome, he said finally, the words sounding rusty, as if he were unaccustomed to expressing gratitude. In the elevator descending from Evan's office, Noah burst into tears. He doesn't care about us at all, he sobbed, burying his face against Ava's side. Not even a little bit. Ava knelt down, gathering both boys close. Listen to me, both of you. Your father's inability to see how extraordinary you are is his failure, not yours. Some people are so focused on what they're building that they miss the most precious things right in front of them. But why? Liam asked, his eyes dry but troubled. Why doesn't he want to know us? I wish I had a better answer, Ava said honestly. But sometimes people make choices based on fear of change, fear of vulnerability, fear of having their carefully constructed plans disrupted. It doesn't make those choices right, but it helps explain them. I'm glad we have you, Noah said, wiping his eyes. You're better than 10 dads. Ava smiled, blinking back her own tears. And I have you too, which makes me the luckiest mom in the world. Now, what do you say we get some ice cream before heading back to the hotel? The twins nodded, their resilience already reasserting itself. As they crossed the lobby toward the exit, a voice called out behind them. Ms. Lewis. Wait. Ava turned to find Evan's assistant, a poised woman in her 30s, approaching with a business card in hand. Mr. Pierce asked me to give you this, she said, handing the card to Ava. It's his private number. He said to call tomorrow morning to arrange for the medical information. Thank you, Ava said, surprised by this small concession to convenience. The assistant hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "He also asked me to tell you that the boys are very well spoken." It was hardly a declaration of paternal pride, but coming from Evan, even this oblique acknowledgement felt significant. Ava nodded her thanks, tucking the card into her purse as the assistant retreated back toward the elevators. "What did she want?" Liam asked as they stepped out into the cool evening air. "Just to give me a way to contact your father about the medical records," Ava explained, deliberately keeping her tone casual. "Now, about that ice cream." Later that night, after the twins were asleep in the hotel room they were sharing, Ava sat by the window looking out at the city skyline. The encounter with Evan had gone almost exactly as she had expected, cold, businesslike, focused solely on the practical matter at hand. He had agreed to provide the medical information Liam needed, which was the only thing that truly mattered. So why did she feel this lingering sense of incompletion, as if something important had been left unsaid? Perhaps it was the look she had glimpsed in Evan's eyes when he first saw the twins. Not just surprise, but something deeper, more complex. Or perhaps it was the way his voice had softened, almost imperceptibly, when he thanked Liam for his courtesy. Small things easily dismissed, and yet, her phone chimed with a text message, startling her from her thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but the content left no doubt about the sender. "Medical records will be delivered to your hotel by 9 a.m. Comprehensive family history included. Have your doctor call my physician directly if clarification needed. Contact information enclosed." Formal, efficient, exactly what she had asked for. But then, a second message appeared. "They have your eyes." 3 simple words, yet they sent a jolt through her. In 8 years, it was the first acknowledgement from Evan that the twins were real people, not just abstract complications to his carefully ordered life. Not just her sons, but his as well, children who carried parts of both their parents in their identical faces. Before she could decide whether to respond, a third message appeared. Would it be possible to meet with them again? Properly this time. Perhaps breakfast tomorrow. Ava stared at the phone, conflicting emotions warring within her. Part of her wanted to protect the twins from further disappointment, to shield them from a man who had already demonstrated his capacity for cruelty and indifference. But another part recognized that they deserved the chance to know their father, to form their own opinions based on more than a single tense encounter. "I'll need to ask them in the morning," she typed back finally. "This has to be their choice." The response came immediately. "Of course. Let me know." Setting her phone aside, Ava continued gazing at the city lights, wondering what had prompted this apparent change of heart. Was it simply seeing the twins in person, these living extensions of himself that he could no longer relegate to abstract concept? Was it Liam's diagnosis, the sudden confrontation with mortality that often shifted perspective? Or was it something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, of what he had sacrificed on the altar of ambition? Whatever the reason, she would approach this new development with caution. The twins had already shown more courage and grace today than most adults would manage in similar circumstances. They deserved to have their feelings prioritized, their boundaries respected. If they wanted to meet their father again, she would facilitate it while remaining their steadfast protector. And if they didn't, if today's rejection had been enough to satisfy their curiosity, she would honor that decision without question. The next morning, when she gently broached the subject over room service breakfast, their reactions surprised her. "He wants to see us again?" Noah asked skeptically. "Why?" "I'm not entirely sure," Ava answered honestly. "Maybe meeting you properly made him realize what he's been missing. Or maybe he just feels bad about Liam being sick," Noah suggested, his protective instinct toward his twin evident. "What do you think, Liam?" Ava asked, turning to her quieter son. "It's your medical information we came for. You have the most say in this." Liam considered the question with the thoughtful deliberation that made him seem older than his 8 years. "I think we should go," he said finally. He seemed sad, somehow, like he was trying really hard not to show something. The observation startled Ava. She had been so focused on protecting the twins from Evan's coldness that she hadn't considered they might see something in him that she couldn't, or wouldn't, allow herself to see. "Noah," she prompted. "You don't have to go if you don't want to." Noah glanced at his brother, their silent communication as effective as spoken words. "If Liam's going, I'm going," he said firmly. "We stick together." Ava texted Evan their acceptance, and an hour later, they found themselves in a private dining room at the hotel's exclusive restaurant. The medical records had arrived as promised, a comprehensive file that would give Liam's doctors everything they needed to optimize his treatment plan. That mission, at least, was accomplished. When Evan entered the dining room, Ava was struck by how different he appeared from the previous evening. Gone was the tuxedo and the public persona of the celebrated CEO. Instead, he wore casual slacks and a simple button-down shirt. His hair slightly less perfect, his demeanor less commanding. He looked, for the first time since she'd known him, slightly uncertain. "Thank you for coming," he said, addressing all three of them but his gaze lingering on the twins. "I realize yesterday's meeting was not ideal." "That's one way to put it," Ava replied, unable to keep a hint of edge from her voice. Evan acknowledged this with a slight nod before turning his attention to the boys. "I understand you play chess, Liam?" Liam nodded, surprise evident in his expression. "Yes, sir. I'm on the school team. I played in college," Evan said. "Made it to the state championships my sophomore year." "Really?" Liam's interest was clearly piqued. "What's your favorite opening?" "Sicilian defense," Evan replied without hesitation. "Aggressive but sound." "That's my favorite too." Liam's face lit up with genuine excitement. "Most kids at school just play Queen's Gambit because it's easier to remember." A small smile touched Evan's lips, the first genuine expression Ava had seen from him since their reunion. "They lack imagination then. The Sicilian offers more creative possibilities." Noah, not wanting to be left out, interjected, "I play soccer. I'm a forward." Evan turned to him, his expression softening further. "I played soccer in high school before I got serious about chess. I was terrible at it, 2 left feet. Mom says I got my coordination from her side." Noah offered, a tentative smile forming. "That's probably for the best." Evan agreed, and for a moment, the tension in the room eased, replaced by something approaching normal conversation. As breakfast progressed, Ava watched in amazement as Evan gradually engaged with the twins, asking questions about their school, their hobbies, their friends. He listened to their answers with what appeared to be genuine interest, occasionally offering connections to his own childhood experiences. It was as if he were meeting them for the first time, which, in a meaningful sense, he was. "Your mother tells me you both like building robots," he said as they finished their meals. The twins nodded enthusiastically. "We made one that can solve a maze," Liam explained. "It uses ultrasonic sensors to detect walls." "And we programmed it ourselves," Noah added proudly. "Mom taught us Python last summer." Evan's gaze shifted to Ava, something like respect flickering in his eyes. "That's impressive teaching. Most adults struggle with Python." "They're quick learners," she replied simply, "and they have a natural affinity for logical structures." "Like their mother," Evan said quietly. The acknowledgement of her contribution to their son's abilities, the first time he had ever recognized her role as their parent, caught Ava off guard. Before she could respond, Evan turned back to the twins. "I have a robotics lab at Meridian," he said. "Nothing fancy, just a space where our engineers prototype ideas. Would you like to see it sometime?" The invitation hung in the air, its implications extending far beyond a simple tour. This was Evan opening a door that had been firmly closed for 8 years, offering not just a glimpse of his professional world, but a potential ongoing connection. The twins looked to Ava, clearly seeking her guidance. She kept her expression neutral, determined that this decision be truly theirs. "That would be up to you too," she said carefully. "Could Mom come too?" Noah asked, his loyalty evident in the question. Something flickered across Evan's face, perhaps surprise, perhaps respect for the boy's protective instinct. "Of course," he said after a brief pause. Your mother would be welcome. Liam and Noah exchanged one of their silent communications before Liam spoke. We'd like that. The robotics lab sounds cool. Excellent. Evan's tone was carefully measured, but Ava caught a hint of genuine pleasure in his expression. Perhaps when you're next in the city, or I could come to Boston. The suggestion that he might travel to see them, might step into their world rather than expecting them to accommodate his, was unexpected. Ava studied him, trying to reconcile this version of Evan, tentative, almost humble, with the man who had once struck her for daring to disrupt his perfect life. That would be easier with Liam's treatment schedule, she said finally, the practical consideration overriding her lingering wariness. Of course. Evan nodded, his gaze shifting to Liam with what appeared to be genuine concern. How are you feeling? Is the condition painful? Sometimes I get really tired, Liam admitted, and I bruise easily, but the doctors say I'll be okay with the right treatment. You will be, Evan said with surprising firmness. I'll make sure of it. The promise hung in the air, laden with implications. This was more than an offer of medical information. It was a commitment to involvement, to taking responsibility in a way he had explicitly rejected 8 years ago. Ava felt a complex surge of emotions, hope for her sons, who deserved a father who cared, wariness born of experience with Evan's capacity for cruelty, and beneath it all, a lingering ache for what might have been if he had made different choices when it mattered most. We should probably head back to our hotel, she said, glancing at her watch. We have a flight to catch this afternoon. Of course. Evan stood, hesitating before adding, Thank you for agreeing to meet today. It means more than I can adequately express. The sincerity in his voice was disarming. Ava nodded, unsure how to respond to this new version of Evan Pierce, a man apparently capable of gratitude, of recognizing value beyond his own ambitions. As they prepared to leave, Evan knelt down to eye level with the twins, another gesture so unlike the man she had known that Ava found herself holding her breath. I'm glad we had this chance to meet properly, he said, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. I'd like to get to know you both better, if that's something you'd want. Why now? Noah asked, the directness of childhood cutting through adult pretense. You didn't want to know us before. The question might have offended or angered the Evan of 8 years ago. This Evan, however, seemed to consider it seriously, his expression thoughtful rather than defensive. That's a fair question, he acknowledged. The truth is, I made a terrible mistake. I was so focused on building my company that I convinced myself nothing else mattered. Not relationships, not family, not even the possibility of being a father. I told myself it was the right choice, the rational choice. He glanced briefly at Ava before continuing. It wasn't until I saw you both yesterday, saw what I'd missed all these years, that I realized how wrong I'd been. Mom says everyone makes mistakes, Liam offered. It's what you do after that matters. A smile touched Evan's lips. Your mother is very wise. The wisest, Noah agreed loyally, and the best coder too. Her company makes really cool stuff. I don't doubt it, Evan said, his gaze meeting Ava's over the boys' heads. She was always brilliant. The compliment, delivered with what seemed like genuine admiration, caught her off guard. This was not the calculated charm he had once deployed to win her affection, nor the cold dismissal of their final encounters. This was something new, respect, perhaps, or recognition of the life she had built without him. We really should go, she said, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Boys, say goodbye to Mr. Pierce. Goodbye, sir, they chorused politely. Evan, he corrected gently. You can call me Evan, or whatever feels comfortable. The implication that someday they might call him something else, something more paternal, hung unspoken in the air. Ava guided the twins toward the door, her emotions too tangled to process in this moment. Ava, Evan called as they reached the threshold. A word, please? Just a moment. She hesitated, then nodded to the twins. Wait for me in the lobby, right by the fountain. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Once the boys were out of earshot, She turned back to Evan, her guard firmly in place. Yes. He approached slowly, maintaining a respectful distance. I want you to know that I understand your skepticism. You have every reason to doubt my intentions, to protect the boys from potential disappointment. Yes, I do, she agreed, her voice steady. They've grown up without you by your choice. They're resilient, but they're still children. Children who deserve better than to be a passing interest in their father's busy life. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of genuine discomfort she had rarely seen from him. I can't change the past 8 years. I can't undo the hurt I caused to them or to you. But I'm asking for a chance to be part of their future, in whatever capacity you deem appropriate. Why? The question that had been burning inside her finally emerged. Why now, Evan? Is it just because of Liam's diagnosis? Some biological imperative triggered by a threat to your genetic legacy? The harshness of her words seemed to strike him physically, but he didn't flinch from them. I deserve that, he acknowledged. But no, it's not just the diagnosis, though I won't pretend that didn't affect me deeply. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Seeing them yesterday, seeing these two remarkable human beings who exist because you were stronger than I was, braver than I was, it forced me to confront the magnitude of what I threw away. Not just the opportunity to be their father, but the kind of man who deserved to be. The raw honesty in his voice was unlike anything she had heard from him before. The Evan she had known had been masterful at saying what people wanted to hear, at crafting narratives that served his purposes. This felt different. Unpolished, uncomfortable, real. They are remarkable, she agreed softly. But that's not because of genetics or legacy or any of the things you might value. It's because they're loved, because they know their worth isn't measured by achievements or status, but by the kindness they show others. A lesson I'm only beginning to learn at 42, Evan admitted. Taught by 8-year-olds who have every reason to reject me. Ava studied him, searching for any sign of the manipulation or calculation that had characterized their past relationship. What she saw instead was something she had never expected: vulnerability. I can't promise anything, she said finally. Their well-being comes first, always. If they want to know you, I won't stand in the way. But at the first sign that you're treating this as a novelty or an obligation rather than a privilege, I'll end it. I understand, he said simply, and I agree to those terms. She nodded, turning to leave, then paused. The medical information, thank you for that. It will make a significant difference in Liam's treatment plan. It's the least I could do, Evan replied. And Ava? Thank you for raising them to be the kind of boys who could face a stranger who happens to be their father with such dignity and grace. That's entirely your doing, and it's extraordinary. The acknowledgement, so different from the dismissive cruelty of their last encounter 8 years ago, left her momentarily speechless. She managed a nod before walking away, her mind racing with the implications of this unexpected turn of events. In the lobby, she found the twins exactly where she had asked them to wait, their identical faces lighting up as they spotted her approaching. Is everything okay, Mom? Liam asked, his perceptive gaze searching her expression. Yes, sweetheart, she assured him, gathering them both close for a quick hug. Everything's fine. Let's head back to the hotel and get packed for our flight. As they made their way through the revolving doors into the bright morning sunlight, Noah looked up at her. Do you think he really wants to know us now? For real? Ava considered the question carefully, unwilling to offer false hope yet equally reluctant to dismiss the possibility of genuine change. I think he's realizing what he missed, she said finally. Whether that translates to being the kind of father you deserve remains to be seen. But whatever happens, we'll face it together, just like we always have. We're still a complete family, just us three, Liam said with the wisdom that sometimes took her breath away. Anything else is just extra. Exactly right, Ava agreed, squeezing his shoulder gently. We're already whole. 3 months later, Ava stood in the doorway of their Boston home, watching as Evan helped the twins put the finishing touches on a robot they had been building together over his weekend visit. It was his third trip to Boston since their encounter at the gala, each visit marked by careful steps toward building a relationship with his sons. The change in him remained startling. The arrogant CEO was still evident in glimpses. His strategic approach to problem-solving, his occasional impatience with inefficiency. But those traits were now tempered by something new: humility. He deferred to the twins' expertise in their own project, asked questions rather than issuing directives, showed genuine delight in their innovations. Most surprising was his behavior toward her. Gone was the manipulative charm of their early relationship and the cold dismissal of their final encounters, replaced by a careful respect that acknowledged both their complicated history and her primary role in their sons' lives. He consulted her before making suggestions to the boys, respected the boundaries she established, and never once attempted to leverage his wealth or influence to override her parenting decisions. "Mom, look," Noah called excitedly. "We got it working. The arm can pick up objects and sort them by color." "That's incredible," she said, moving into the room to examine their creation. "How did you solve the grip sensitivity issue?" "Evan showed us a pressure sensor calibration technique," Liam explained, his use of his father's first name still a compromise between formality and familiarity. "It's the same one they use in Meridian's medical robotics division." Evan smiled, but Ava noticed he made no attempt to take credit for the solution. "They figured out the implementation entirely on their own," he said. "I just pointed them toward the concept." The easy generosity of the comment, giving the twins full ownership of their achievement, was yet another sign of the change in him. The Evan she had known would have ensured his contribution was recognized, his expertise acknowledged. "We're going to enter it in the school science fair next month," Noah added. "Evan said he might come if he can rearrange some meetings." "That would be nice," Ava said carefully, still wary of the boys building expectations that might lead to disappointment. "I'll be there," Evan said with quiet certainty. Some things are more important than meetings. The simple statement, so contrary to everything he had once believed, hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken history. 8 years ago, nothing had been more important than his company, his ambitions, his carefully constructed life plan. Now, he was rearranging board meetings to attend an elementary school science fair. Later, after the twins had gone to bed and Evan was preparing to leave for his hotel, he paused at the door. "Liam's latest test results looked promising," he said. "Dr. Chun seems optimistic about the new treatment protocol." "Yes," Ava agreed. "The comprehensive family history you provided made a significant difference in tailoring his care. The genetic markers from your grandfather's side were particularly helpful in predicting how he might respond to certain treatments." "I'm glad." Evan hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about establishing a research foundation focused on rare blood disorders, particularly those affecting children. The resources available for families facing these conditions are woefully inadequate." The initiative was so unexpected, so unlike the ruthlessly profit-focused CEO she had known, that Ava found herself momentarily speechless. "That would be remarkable," she said finally. "It could help many families." "It won't change the past," Evan acknowledged, understanding the unspoken question in her response. "Nothing can do that, but perhaps it can create something meaningful for the future." He paused, then added quietly, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about legacy these past few months. What it really means, what truly lasts." "And what conclusions have you reached?" Ava asked, genuinely curious about this apparent transformation. "That I spent 15 years building something that will be forgotten within a generation of my death," he said simply, while nearly missing the chance to know two extraordinary human beings who carry forward not just my DNA but potentially something far more valuable: the capacity for kindness, curiosity, and integrity that you've instilled in them. The raw honesty in his voice was still disarming, still difficult to reconcile with the man who had once coldly dismissed their unborn children as complications to his perfect life. "They are extraordinary," she agreed, "and they're giving you a precious gift by allowing you into their lives. I hope you understand how fortunate you are." "More than you know," he said quietly. "More than I can express. And not just for the chance to know them, but for the opportunity to see the remarkable life you've built, the mother you've become. I was wrong about so many things, Ava. Most of all, I was wrong about what constitutes true success. The acknowledgement, so complete, so unequivocal, left her momentarily without words. For years, she had imagined confronting Evan, forcing him to recognize the magnitude of what he had thrown away. Now that the moment had arrived, she found the vindication less satisfying than she had anticipated, overshadowed by the genuine growth evident in the man before her. "Good night, Evan," she said simply. "Drive safely." As she closed the door behind him, Ava leaned against it, processing the strange journey that had brought them to this point. 8 years ago, she had fled New York with a bruised cheek and a broken heart, carrying twins the world's most promising entrepreneur had rejected as inconvenient complications to his ambitions. Now, that same man was rearranging his schedule to attend school science fairs, helping build robots on weekend visits, and establishing research foundations inspired by his son's medical condition. People could change. Not easily, not without significant catalyst, but they could change. The question that remained was whether that change was deep enough, permanent enough, to risk allowing Evan a more significant role in their lives. Only time would provide that answer. For now, she would continue as she always had, protecting her sons, supporting their growth, and ensuring that whatever relationship developed with their father served their well-being, rather than Evan's need for redemption or her own complicated feelings about the past. If you've ever witnessed the power of second chances to transform not just relationships but the people within them, hit that like button. And if you believe that true growth often comes from facing our greatest mistakes, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us it's never too late to become the person we should have been all along. 6 months after their confrontation at the award ceremony, Ava sat in the audience of another grand ballroom, this one at Boston Children's Hospital. Beside her, the twins fidgeted in their dress clothes, excited but nervous about the evening ahead. "Do you think a lot of people will come?" Noah whispered, tugging at his tie. "The event sold out weeks ago," Ava replied, straightening his collar. "The Pierce Foundation for Pediatric Blood Disorders has generated a lot of interest in the medical community." On stage, hospital administrators and medical researchers were gathering for the official launch of the foundation Evan had established in the wake of Liam's diagnosis. What had begun as a personal response to his son's condition had evolved into a comprehensive initiative supporting research, treatment, and family support services for children with rare blood disorders. "There he is," Liam said, pointing as Evan appeared at the side of the stage, engaged in conversation with the hospital's chief of pediatric hematology. Ava studied him from a distance, still sometimes startled by the changes these months had wrought. He remained Evan Pierce, billionaire CEO of Meridian Technologies, with all the confidence and authority that position entailed. But there was something different in his bearing now, a groundedness that hadn't existed before, as if his priorities had shifted from abstract achievement to concrete human connection. "Ladies and gentlemen," the hospital director began, "it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural gala for the Pierce Foundation for Pediatric Blood Disorders. This initiative represents a landmark commitment to advancing treatment options for some of our most vulnerable patients." As Evan took the stage to polite applause, his gaze immediately found them in the audience, a small smile acknowledging their presence before he turned to address the assembled donors, medical professionals, and families affected by pediatric blood disorders. "Thank you for that kind introduction," he began, his voice carrying the same confidence that had built a tech empire, but tempered now with something new, a humility that made his words more powerful, not less. 6 months ago, I knew very little about Fanconi anemia or any of the other rare blood disorders that affect thousands of children across this country. Like many parents, I believed serious illness was something that happened to other families, not mine. He paused, his gaze returning briefly to where Liam sat between Ava and Noah. "Then my son was diagnosed, and everything changed. Not just my understanding of this particular medical condition, but my perspective on what truly matters in life." The simple acknowledgement, "my son," sent a ripple of emotion through Ava. For years, Evan had refused to even acknowledge the twins' existence. Now he was publicly claiming Liam not just as his biological offspring but as his son, with all the responsibility and connection that word implied. In the business world, we often talk about legacy. Evan continued. We measure success in market share, in technological innovation, in quarterly profits. But sitting in doctors' offices, learning about my son's condition, I began to understand that true legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's created in how we care for one another, how we respond to challenges not with self-interest but with compassion and commitment to something larger than ourselves. As he outlined the foundation's ambitious goals, funding innovative research, supporting affected families with practical resources, creating networks of specialized care accessible to all children regardless of economic status, Ava found herself moved by the genuine passion in his voice. This wasn't the calculated philanthropy of a billionaire burnishing his public image. This was a deeply personal mission born of love for a child he had once rejected. The Pierce Foundation begins today with an initial endowment of $50 million, Evan announced, drawing gasps from the audience. But more important than financial resources is our commitment to the principle that every child deserves not just treatment but hope. Hope for a future where these conditions are understood, managed effectively, and ultimately cured. As applause filled the ballroom, Noah leaned over to whisper to his brother, "He's doing this because of you." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Not just for me, though. For all the kids like me." The simple observation captured exactly what had changed in Evan. His focus had expanded from narrow self-interest to a broader vision of responsibility and connection. The man who had once seen a child as nothing more than a complication to his perfect life now understood that his true purpose might lie in helping not just his own son but all children facing similar challenges. After the formal presentation concluded and the evening shifted to the reception portion, Evan made his way through the crowd to where they waited. He knelt down to eye level with the twins, his expression softening in the way it now did only with them. "What did you think?" he asked, genuine interest in their opinion evident in his voice. "It was really good," Noah offered enthusiastically, "especially the part about the research network connecting hospitals. The doctor said it could help kids even in places without big hospitals like this one," Liam added. "That's important." Evan nodded, clearly pleased by their understanding. "That's exactly right. Some of the most promising treatments are only available at major medical centers right now. We want to change that." As he stood, his gaze met Ava's over the twins' heads. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said quietly. "It means a great deal to have you all here." "The foundation is remarkable, Evan," she acknowledged. "It will make a real difference for many families." Something flickered in his expression. Gratitude, perhaps, for her recognition of his efforts, or possibly for the simple fact that she now used his name without the coldness that had characterized their early reunions. "I hope so," he replied. "It's a start, at least." The evening continued with introductions to researchers, conversations with other affected families, and the twins' increasingly evident fatigue as the hour grew late. When Liam began to yawn despite his best efforts to hide it, Ava made the decision it was time to leave. "We should head home," she said, gathering their coats. "It's been a long day, and the boys have school tomorrow." Evan nodded in understanding. "Of course. I'll walk you to your car." Outside, the spring evening was cool but pleasant, the hospital's gardens illuminated by soft lighting that created pools of gold among the emerging greenery. As they walked toward the parking area, the twins ran ahead, their energy momentarily renewed by the fresh air. "They're remarkable children," Evan said, watching them with evident pride. "So resilient, so thoughtful." "Yes, they are," Ava agreed. "They've handled all of this, Liam's diagnosis, meeting you, the public attention from the foundation, with more grace than most adults could manage." They walked in silence for a moment before Evan spoke again, his voice quieter now. "I've been thinking about something, and I wanted to discuss it with you before mentioning it to the boys." The careful approach, consulting her first, respecting her primary role in their lives, was another marker of how far he had come from the man who had once made unilateral decisions affecting them all. "What is it?" she asked. "Meridian is opening a research division in Boston," he explained, "focused on medical applications of our AI technology. working in partnership with several hospitals, including this one. Ava absorbed this information, immediately understanding its implications. "You're considering relocating?" "Yes." He glanced at her, gauging her reaction. "Not permanently. The company headquarters will remain in New York. But I could be here 3 or 4 days each week, close enough to be more consistently present in the boys' lives. If that's something you'd be comfortable with." The proposal hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken history and potential future. 6 months ago, the idea of Evan establishing a more permanent presence in their lives would have filled her with wariness, perhaps even dread. Now, having witnessed his genuine efforts to connect with the twins, his respect for the boundaries she established, his apparent transformation from the man who had once struck her in anger, she found herself considering it seriously. "The boys would like having you closer," she acknowledged. "The weekend visits have meant a lot to them. And to me," he added quietly, "more than I can adequately express." They reached her car, the twins already waiting by the passenger doors, their identical faces illuminated by the parking lot lights. Looking at them, these remarkable children who carried parts of both their parents in their features, their talents, their personalities. Ava felt a sudden clarity about the path forward. "We could try it," she said finally. "See how it works for everyone. But Evan," she added, meeting his gaze directly, "this has to be a genuine commitment. They're at an age where they're forming their understanding of relationships, of reliability, of what it means when someone says they'll be there. I won't have them learning that people can drift in and out of their lives without consequence." "I understand," he said solemnly, "and I agree completely. This isn't a whim or a novelty, Ava. It's the most important commitment I've ever made." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Whatever else had changed or remained the same about Evan Pierce, his determination, once focused exclusively on business success, now extended to his relationship with his sons. "Then we'll talk to them about it this weekend," she decided. Together, as they said their goodbyes and she drove the sleepy twins home, Ava reflected on the strange, unexpected journey that had brought them to this point. 8 years ago, she had fled New York with a bruised cheek and a broken heart, carrying twins the world's most promising entrepreneur had rejected as inconvenient complications to his ambitions. She had rebuilt her life from scratch, created a successful company, raised 2 extraordinary boys, all while believing Evan Pierce would never be anything but a painful memory. Now, that same man was establishing medical foundations, relocating business divisions, and rearranging his entire life to be present for the children he had once rejected. The transformation was so complete, so seemingly genuine, that it challenged her long-held beliefs about people's capacity for change. Perhaps that was the most valuable lesson in all of this, that no one, not even those who have hurt us most deeply, should be permanently defined by their worst decisions. That redemption, while never guaranteed, remains possible for those willing to confront their failures with genuine remorse and commitment to change. 2 weeks later, as she watched Evan helping the twins set up a new telescope in their backyard, a gift to celebrate his first official day as a part-time Boston resident, Ava found herself contemplating the nature of forgiveness. Not the easy, superficial kind that papers over wounds without healing them, but the deeper forgiveness that acknowledges the pain while creating space for something new to grow in its place. She had not forgotten the man who had once struck her, who had coldly dismissed their unborn children as complications, who had threatened her career and her future. That history remained part of their story, a shadow that would never completely disappear. But alongside it now existed another reality, a man learning, however belatedly, to be the father his sons deserved, to value connection over achievement, to measure success not in dollars or accolades but in moments of genuine presence. "Mom, come see," Noah called excitedly. "We can see Jupiter's moons." As she joined them at the telescope, the 4 of them huddled together in the cool evening air, she realized they had created something none of them could have anticipated. Not a conventional family, certainly, but a constellation of their own making, connected by bonds both biological and chosen, by shared history and newly forged trust. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what she had once dreamed of when she first fell in love with the brilliant, ambitious founder of Meridian Technologies. It was messier, more complicated, shaped by pain as well as joy. But it was real and it was theirs, and perhaps that was enough. "Your turn, Mom," Liam said, stepping back from the telescope. As she bent to look through the eyepiece at the distant planet and its orbiting moons, Ava thought about the journey that had brought them here. Not just the physical distance from New York to Boston, but the emotional terrain they had traversed, from rejection to reconciliation, from cruelty to compassion, from isolation to connection. Some journeys can only be understood in retrospect, their purpose revealed not in the moment of departure, but in the unexpected destinations they ultimately lead us to. 8 years ago, fleeing New York with her unborn twins, Ava could never have imagined standing in a Boston backyard with Evan Pierce, watching their sons discover the wonders of the night sky. Yet here they were, their shared past transformed not by forgetting but by the harder, more meaningful work of growth and genuine change. As she straightened from the telescope, her gaze met Evan's over the twins' heads. In his eyes, she saw not just the brilliant, driven entrepreneur she had once loved, nor the cruel, dismissive man who had rejected her and their unborn children, but something new. A person humbled by his mistakes, grateful for second chances, committed to becoming worthy of the family he had nearly lost forever. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be difficult conversations, boundaries to maintain, trust to rebuild day by day. But it was a beginning of sorts, not of the life she had once imagined, but of something unexpected and potentially more meaningful. A family defined not by conventional structures but by the choice to move forward together, honoring both their complicated past and their shared hopes for the future. If you've ever wondered whether people can truly change, whether the wounds of the past can be healed not by forgetting but by growing beyond them, I hope this story offers some measure of hope. The journey from rejection to reconciliation is rarely straight or simple, but it begins with a single step, the courage to face our mistakes, to seek forgiveness not as an entitlement but as a gift, and to become, however belatedly, the people we should have been all along. I'm Mr. Harrison, and I believe that our greatest stories aren't those of perfect lives, but of imperfect people finding their way back to what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales for more journeys of redemption, resilience, and the enduring power of love in all its complicated forms. Remember, it's never too late to change the narrative of your life, to recognize, as Evan Pierce finally did, that true success isn't measured in achievements or accolades but in the lives we touch, the love we give, and the legacy of compassion we leave behind. Until next time, may your own story be one of growth, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again, even when the path ahead seems uncertain.